Good evening, everyone. The council chambers, Tuesday, August 8th, 2023. We had a few little bumps in the road, but with the great city work, it's all smoothed out. How's that? Call to order. Please stand for a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Identify potential conflicts of interest. Any conflicts of interest this evening? Seeing none, we'll move on to item D. Public hearing, 2022 revised special assessment project 312240 Hinman Avenue, Dagey Street to Becker Road. Public hearing opened. Anybody care to speak about this special assessment? Public hearing open. Public hearing open. Public hearing closed. Item E, public hearing, 2023 established special assessment projects 311916, street construction, water service laterals, storm sewer, and 351755, sanitary sewer service laterals, Lincoln Avenue, 5th Street to Adler Road. Public hearing is now open. Anybody wish to comment on public hearing? Public hearing is open. Any comments? Seeing none, public hearing is closed. Item F, public comment period correspondence. At this time, I will recognize those members of the public who have indicated a desire to address the council. Upon recognition by me, persons may address the council first stating their name and address. The council may act on emergency matters introduced by members of the public. You will have 5 minutes from when you say your name. Our first lucky winner is Bruce.
Hello, my name is Bruce Krawas. I live at 1600 North Hills in Marshfield, and I'm a physician, pathologist, retired from clinical practice, and I do research at Marshfield Clinic Research Institute. And I have some slides I wanted to show you. I was going to talk to you about how air pollution appears to cause illness in people. Yes?
Okay, but I have one, sorry. Yeah.
Yep, thank you. Well, there's a statistical association between higher levels of air pollution and the development of dementia in humans. There's also a statistical association where people who live in high air pollution areas are more likely to have a stroke and more likely to have a heart attack. And there's also an association that babies are more likely to be born prematurely in areas of high air pollution. And when a baby is born preterm, that baby is more likely to die. So there's a statistical association between higher levels of air pollution and infant mortality. What I'd like to talk about is why would this be? Like, for example, how could air pollution cause disease of the brain or of the heart or of a baby in the uterus? This is a slide of a heart cell. We're only looking at a tiny part of one cell. The magnification here is 50,000 times. And this sort of circular structure here and this one here, these are called mitochondria, and mitochondria are normal parts of a cell, of just about every kind of a cell. And this black dot with an arrow, this is a particle of air pollution. And it's dark, it's a black color because it contains metals like iron, for example, and lead and mercury and cadmium. And these things appear black on an electron microscope. So this is a heart cell, but it has air pollution in it. And now we know, recent discoveries have shown us that air pollution enters the lung, and then the smallest air pollution particles can pass through the cells of the lung and into the bloodstream, and then the particles of air pollution are distributed to other parts of the body. Now this is a slide from the frontal lobe of a human brain, and this cell that we're seeing here is a neuron, and we can tell that because, I can tell it because a neuron has a thick sheath around it that's called a myelin sheath. Possibly some of you have heard of myelin. It's a normal part of the human body. And this neuron also has a black dot in it, which is a particle of air pollution. And so air pollution that we breathe also reaches the brain. And the evidence suggests, but it hasn't been proven, that actually air pollution enters into our nose, and some of it goes to the top part of the nose, which is where the neurons of smell exist. And they become taken up by those neurons and taken into the brain. That hasn't been proven, but what has been proven is that particles of air pollution are found in the human brain. Now, this is a light microscopic slide. This one is, the magnification is about 400 times. And this is a histologic section of a placenta. And these large spaces here is a blood vessel of the mother. And the placenta, these sort of villus structures or finger-like structures, this is part of the placenta. The placenta is made of cells from the baby. So we can think of the placenta as an organ of the baby when it's in the uterus. And they grow into the mother's blood vessels, and that's how the placenta gets oxygen from the mother, okay? And so here is also a light micrograph of a placenta, but it's a special lighting system. And what they're doing is they're using a powerful laser that's 90 degrees to the microscope, and they're bouncing beams of light off particles of pollution. And like, for example, this white dot, this is a particle of air pollution that's in the placenta. Here's another one here, and here's another one here. Can everybody see all this okay? And there was a study done. It was done in Belgium and Scotland. 2 laboratories collaborated. It was published very recently. You probably haven't heard of it. But they examined 60 placentas from healthy deliveries, and every single one had particles of air pollution in the placenta. Okay, so what the idea that I'm trying to present, and this isn't fully developed, we don't know the whole story yet, but the idea is that the reason air pollution causes human disease is because the air pollution particles actually enter into an organ like the brain or the heart or the placenta and directly cause disease. And that's what I wanted to say now. I'm all finished.
Thank you, Bruce.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for the information.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you.
Absolutely. Come back anytime. Any other citizen comment? Anybody else? Robert's rules have to ask this 3 times. 3 times and we're out. Item G, approval of minutes from July 25th, 2023. Motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Tompkins. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Mormon,
Yes.
Mr. Rigel,
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Staff updates. Introduction of a new staff member, Vicki Rabb, Administrative Associate 2, introduced by Jordan Munger, Accounting Manager.
Hi, everybody. Until this morning, Vicki was supposed to be here today, but she was unable to attend today due to some personal matters. So if you get time to come down to City Hall, she'll be in one of the booths out front. She has a little bit longer hair. She's our new administrative associate too, taking over the spot from McKenna Hill that was recently vacated in April. She joined us on the later part of June and has been helping us out with as far as special assessments payments that we receive up at the front, doing a little bit of offloading AP while we're doing cross training. And she comes to us from the school district of Auburndale. So we're happy to have her.
Thank you, Jordan, and welcome, Vicki. Number 2 on the staff updates, yard waste site maintenance update presented by Tim Rasmussen, Acting Street Superintendent.
Good evening. From the request made, I've included in your packet some information that has a background analysis and the direction of the street division in regards to the waste yard site. Some key takeaways from that information is that the contract between the City of Marshfield and Waste Management requires that Waste Management provide, operate, and properly sign a yard waste site. The current site is located on land owned and operated by Waste Management. The contract calls out some specifications that are agreed upon at the date of the contract, some of which include a 2.5 acre site, open to customers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, a free flow of traffic, and signage. Currently, Waste Management holds contracts with other townships and villages who also utilize the site for brush, branches, and grass clippings. The street division is currently the liaison of the city contract. The trash, recycling, and yard waste contract causes many calls to the street division. The calls range from exchanging of trash cans, complaints of curbside pickup not occurring, and various others. When it comes to trash and recycling issues, Waste Management is accommodating and relatively quick to respond, and we work together to resolve the issues. I will be honest though, the calls the street division receives about the contract yard waste site has recently seen higher than normal call volumes. Most of these calls come in on a Monday after a nice weekend when many have been out completing yard work and the site is heavily used. To try and remedy the issues, the street division has worked with Waste Management to try and improve the flow of the site. Last summer, the street division installed access to another driveway along Hume. This allows customers to not have to turn around to exit the site. And it wasn't until this summer that Waste Management began to install the additional road going around the west side of the brush pile, and that is ongoing. Along with the road, Waste Management has made us aware that they intend to add additional signage, complete the gate and fence work at the driveway along Hume, and complete weed control within the site. Although painstakingly slow, Waste Management has been receptive to improvement recommendations by the street division. The cheapest and possibly quickest action for improvement that may be requested is from one user to another. Be considerate of those that want to dump brush, branches, and leaves after you. Try piling your material on the piles to allow access lanes to remain open. Remove your leaves from all the bags so that the material has the highest potential to be broken down and reused. and do not use the site as a trash landfill. The amount of garbage and concrete pieces found in the chipping and composting piles has decreased the number of companies wanting to use this material. Alternative options may not come as cheap as price tag as what I just mentioned. Requesting the installation of security cameras or an attendant to help police users come at a cost to all users. If self-policing each other can't be done, Waste Management could request a contract change to limit the site business hours, making it less convenient to drop off materials, or even worse, not be interested in offering a compost site in the next contract renewal, in which the city would have to take a role of managing to continue to offer the residents a location to dump yard waste. With that, I'd like to assure you that the Street Division plans to continue to work to fully enforce the contract with Waste Management and work through issues that arise. I ask if there are any other questions to please reach out to our office, and if we don't have an immediate resolution, we will work to find one. Thanks.
Thank you, Tim. Alderman Tompkins?
First of all, thank you so much for making that presentation. I know a lot of us have had phone calls from various constituents because this year everyone has to take their waste to this site. So now we have a lot of people who suddenly are interested in it. I'm just wondering if it's possible to work with the communication department to maybe just as a heads up to citizens, just some, I don't know, this is how you can help your fellow dumper, or, you know, just some like tips so that people realize like, oh, I'm not supposed to leave my plastic bags there, or my paper bags, or things that they maybe aren't reading the signs for. It's just a suggestion. I think the more we get the word out that the way we use it will affect how well it's maintained might help people.
Anyone else have any comments? Moving on to item I, my comments, employee recognitions, Corey Brock, Street Department, 5 years. Congratulations, Corey. And I also want to recognize the Paramedics Award EMS Cardiac Arrest Save Challenge coins. Marshfield Fire and Rescue paramedics were awarded the EMS Cardiac Arrest Save Challenge coins for the successful of the patient who went into full arrest. The Cardiac Arrest Save coin is only awarded to EMS individuals who successfully revive a clinically dead patient so effectively that they can return to a quality of life. Thank you, Deputy Chief Steve Bakos, for starting this amazing coin challenge. And as I see from a video, those who received the award this time around are Lieutenant Jason Schad, Firefighter Critical Care Paramedic Nate Seeger, Firefighter Critical Care Paramedic Dylan Cook, Firefighter Critical Care Paramedic Tyler Hines, Relief Lieutenant Nate McNamara, Firefighter Paramedic Jenna Madsen, Firefighter Critical Care Paramedic Jacob Kanowski, Relief Lieutenant Tom Fighter, Relief Critical Care Paramedic Justin Hansen, Relief Critical Care Paramedic Alexa Strawn, Firefighter Paramedic Jacob Bowman, Firefighter Critical Paramedic Matt Wolf. Again, thank you all for what you do for the city and the rest of the firefighters and the police department. Without you, we would not have the great city we have. Thank you very much. We do not look forward to more of these, but just think what we've done. And if you get a chance to watch the video, you'll have a little tear. It was absolutely fabulous. And please share with all your friends. And the easiest way to do it, there's a little envelope on the top of the city of Marshfield. You click on that. You can either get text or emails. I do all the time. That's how I found this out. Okay, I'm the mayor. I should know these things, right? We don't know everything. So you just go on the website and it'll feed you all the information. And Natasha, that's a great idea. We get the communications department involved with these issues. And anybody else, anybody in the city have any issues that they want to share, please reach out to either them or any of us here, and we'll help to make this happen. Again, we live in the greatest city in, Wisconsin, USA, the world. How's that? And there ends my report. Item J, Common Council comments. Anybody? Item K, City Administrator's update.
Sure, just a couple of quick items. The council has authorized at a previous meeting moving forward with creation of TIF District 14. It's a mixed-use TIF district up in the area south of West McMillan Street and east of Veterans Parkway, sort of along that area between Marwood and the Fleet Farm area. There will be a special meeting on the 21st of August. It's a Monday at 2 o'clock in this room. It'll be the Joint Review Board. That's members from the school district, Tech College, county, city, and a citizen member. They'll be looking at the proposal. And then there'll be a special planning commission meeting on August 29th for the same purpose. Council will see this then in September. Also want to thank the members of the council and the mayor who have agreed to go with me to the clinic on Thursday afternoon at 4:30. There's a meeting of the clinics. They call it the Community Advisory Board. You know that the clinic comes here with representatives and twice a year makes a presentation to the mayor and council about things they're working on, some of the accomplishments and some of the issues they're dealing with. I've done the same twice a year with the Community Advisory Board. I'll be doing it again on the 10th at 4:30 p.m. But thanks to council members O'Reilly and Varsho and to Mayor Teestrake for agreeing to accompany me on that visit later this week. And then finally, just want to note that I had one more item here. I'm trying to find it. Oh, just a quick update on the school resource officer issue. You know, we've been talking with the school district, and I had a conversation the other day with Ryan Christensen, the superintendent, and that is moving forward in terms of the school's budget. They won't actually formally consider approval of their budget until into the fall, but that is in there. They are looking to fund, as I think we've talked about it before, one of the two positions that we have over there between the middle school and the high school. So hopefully that comes to pass, and that would be a good thing for the city in terms of our revenue, and I think it would be a good project. And they're working on an agreement that they've shared with us a draft of how that the details of that would be handled. So that's my report for tonight.
Thank you, Steve. Item L, reports from commissions, boards, and committees. Seeing none, on to item M, consent agenda. Motion by Alderman Spiros, second by Alderman Varsho. Any comments? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. And we can skip over N because we have no action. Item O, second reading of ordinance number 1498, rezoning portion of partial 33-06973 from TR6 two-family residential to MR12 multiple family residential, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. In the last couple of days, an issue has been raised regarding a minor issue with the legal description of the property involved. In consultation with the city attorney, he's advised that it would be best for us to postpone consideration of this rezoning of the ordinance until the next meeting. So I would ask that you postpone this for 2 weeks until August 22nd.
We have a motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Fire. Any other discussion?
Is your motion to postpone, Mrs. Tompkins?
Thank you. Now, do we have to vote on that also? Please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Thank you. I'll look for item O in 2 weeks. May not be item O, but we'll see what happens. Item P, second reading of ordinance number 1499, amending sections 18-31 zoning district regulations MR12 multiple family residential, 18-32 zoning district regulations MR24 multiple family residential, and 18.-55 residential uses townhouse to clarify a minimum lot size and minimum lot width for townhouse units located on individual lots, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. This is a second reading of this particular ordinance as well, and I won't go through it a whole lot. It's pretty simple anyway, and we talked about it a little bit at our last meeting. But this came out of a review and determination that the definition of a townhouse and the way it's laid out in terms of how the lot coverage and some of the requirements that affect the individual townhouse lots is really not accounted for the way it should be. So it's really unclear right now as to how to calculate the lot width, the lot area, the building coverage for interior lots where these townhouses are found. And this does tie, I mean, in part to something that's being proposed by the developer from the previous item, But it's something that needs to be cleared up regardless. It just, there's not enough direction for staff in terms of how to deal with the townhouse issue that's referred to in this memo. So staff would recommend council approval of this ordinance.
Motion by Alderman Giles, second by Alderman Wagner. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Weigel?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Item Q, first reading of ordinance number 1497, amending chapter 9.52, permitting chickens to be housed in residential areas, presented by Steve Barg, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. If it's okay, I'd like to invite Bob Larson, one of our ordinance officers, to the podium. He brought an issue to my attention that I think is worth noting before we discuss this item for first reading.
Thank you. I guess I have a question, and I think Michael Rowley, you're gonna be the guy to answer it. How do we come about in the last plan commission meeting to decide we're gonna sell chickens?
Absolutely, Mike.
Thank you.
Alderman O'Reilly.
The whole concept was we already have a limit of 4 chickens, so they couldn't have more than that. The second portion is there are no roosters allowed, so there would be no breeding happening. And the concept was with those 2 rules in place, why would we stop, if someone lost their ability or decided not to have the chickens, why wouldn't they be able to sell them to a neighbor or someone else that you're almost forced to butcher them at that point when they could be laying hens? So that was kind of the concept behind the reasoning behind that as far as I understood.
Okay, because I'm not exactly sure why we would have to even put that in. People have dogs, have cats, ferrets, I could go on and on. When something happens and they have to get rid of those animals, they reach out to whomever they have to reach out to find a place for those to go. My concern about allowing the sale of chickens is that people are going to hear that and think, well, we can sell chickens. So even though we allow for 4, that doesn't mean there's not going to be a place out there that allows, or thinking they can have more than 4. So what would stop somebody from bringing in 8, 10, 12, 20, however many, thinking, well, I can just sell them? Because the ordinance, the way it's written, says the sale of chickens is permitted. There's nothing stopping anybody really to do that, except for a piece of paper that says you can only have 4. And we all know that that piece of paper is only as good as the enforcement, not stating that we're not going to enforce that. But it's difficult. We go to a place that has 10 chickens and we tell them, you got to find a place for 6 of them. Well, I'll just sell them. They bring in another 6 to replace that, or however many happens to be. I just see a vicious cycle of having more than the 4 just because we're allowing them by stating that it's okay to sell them. We're not permitting the sale of eggs. And I guess I don't know why we wouldn't allow the sale of eggs versus the sale of chickens. Chickens have a higher disease problem with avian flu and salmonella and a whole bunch of other things that are just nonstop. But why are we not, I guess, allowing the sale of eggs then? Not that I want to be going down that road, but it just seems odd to me that we're going to be able to sell the bird that's going to give us the eggs, but we can't sell the eggs.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I didn't know that that actually got put in there. I thought it was just removed completely. I think removing it may solve the problem. And by the way, I don't care if people sell eggs. It's, I guess, I don't know if the health department would have an issue with it. That may create a problem. But
yeah, I don't know either.
In reality, I mean, I think a lot of anything that's in any ordinance we have in the city, people are going to interpret things wrong, which creates problems. So eliminating it would probably take that thought process that it is a marketable type product out of it. It seemed to me like it was overbearing to put that in there when we already had multiple rules in place that would basically disallow it. So that was the whole thought process behind it. And then the other you had mentioned, the closest chicken refuge, if you will.
Yeah.
It's over by Menominee or something.
Yeah, and there might be one in Chippewa Falls as well. But
Yeah,
I feel like that's up to the resident who wants to have the chickens. It falls on their shoulders and their responsibility to deal with trying to find a place for those birds to go should something come up where they can't have them anymore. And we're going to run into this potentially. I don't want to say we are definitely going to do this, but we could run into this problem anyway with issues of neglect or not maintaining the property as they should, and we're going to have to find a place for them to go. And right now, I think Chippewa Falls or beyond.
yeah, and we just thought that would make it easier. If they can sell them, I don't care if they give them away, but having a situation where it strictly prohibits it is kind of working against a way to deal with it appropriately.
And I'm not necessarily saying we should prohibit it completely. I mean, like I said, people sell the puppies if they decide to have a bunch of puppies and they sell them for whatever price tag they want to sell them for. It's a money-making thing for them. I don't know that we should necessarily prohibit the sale, but I don't know that we want to advertise that we're going to do it, because then I think it's a free-for-all for a whole bunch of people to just bring in a whole bunch of little baby chicks. We grow them up. Hey, let's sell them. Go get a bunch more baby chicks. We sell them. And it's just a nonstop thing. And it almost seems like at one point we're then running a business out of a residential neighborhood, which I do believe, if I'm not wrong, prohibited by ordinance. I just don't want to open up Pandora's box or something like that.
No, I agree.
Just eliminate that section.
I absolutely agree. I think if you're of the same mindset, I think that actually should be removed from it. I think you just named multiple reasons that they can't do what this kind of says they can do.
Mm-hmm.
So eliminating it, I think makes sense.
Alderman Tompkins and then Alderman Weigel.
Hi, I actually have a lot of questions. Is that okay?
It is. I will say though right now, I wanted to have Bob weigh in with his questions as one of our ordinance officers. I really haven't walked through, well, it's not going to be a long presentation, but some of the highlights of the ordinance. So I can do that after questions, but I will be walking through some of the main points of what's included.
If you want to do that first, that's fine.
Is that okay?
Because you may answer some.
Yeah, I might. Thank you. Let me just start out real briefly, and I apologize for starting it kind of differently. But this ordinance has actually been discussed in some way or other for a number of years. It was one of the first things that I came upon when I moved here in 2011. It was discussed by the council and actually voted down at that point 6-3. In the meantime, a lot of cities and villages across Wisconsin have adopted some version of this to allow limited numbers of chickens in backyards, in small pens adjacent to the garage, that kind of thing. So the idea was brought up again recently, and it's been discussed by our plan commission at I think maybe 3 meetings in the last few months. And what you have before you tonight is the first reading of an ordinance that would allow up to 4 maximum to be in a small confined area, a pen, a coop, whatever you want to call it. It needs to be at least 5 feet from side and rear lot lines. It has to be at least 25 feet from adjacent principal residential structures. So trying to give that separation for neighbors. And you'd have to get a license, an annual license would have to be obtained. We want to know who these folks are. I think one of the things that Officer Larson might tell you is that the concern that some people will go ahead without getting a license, the way they probably do right now with dogs and cats or whatever. But we want to license them. We want to know who they are, what they are. We want to be able to inspect and know that, in fact, the situation that they have at their home is something that's acceptable to be able to handle. The chickens, they need to be cleaning them regularly. I know we've gotten a few emails over time. I think some people in the survey that Communications Director Tom Laux did suggested some people are concerned about smell or impact on them as neighbors. So those things have all been discussed. But ultimately, the Plan Commission has voted to move this forward to the council for consideration. There were a couple of changes made at the last moment. The one we've talked about already, about the sale of chickens, and I think it's a good discussion that the two of you just had, or maybe that could come out. And then the other piece was on, initially the ordinance required approval of all your neighbors in order to do this. So if you had 5 property owners that abutted your home, you could not get a license unless all 5 of them had signed off specifically that they would be acceptable to you doing that. One of the questions that came up in Plan Commission discussion, obviously, is what if you have a neighbor that just simply doesn't like you? And maybe they don't like basketball poles. If you needed approval to get a basketball pole in your driveway, they might say no to that Two, because they're not really fond of you for some other reason. Is it fair to say that somebody could get a permit or a license over here and somebody else can't over here because of those type of internal neighborhood affairs? So if you abide by the rules, get the license, and do all the things according to the code, you would be able to have up to 4 chickens in this confined area. So with that in mind, we put it forth for first reading tonight and questions and discussion by this body.
Alderman Tompkins?
All right, I have 4 questions. One, how much does the license cost?
Ooh. I should know that offhand.
I don't think we discussed that.
No, I think we'll try to do, as we do with most license fees, is to recoup the administrative cost of processing, but I don't see, at least in the proposal, I don't see a dollar amount yet.
Okay.
So that would have to be set. Good point.
Will the backyards and the chicken coops be inspected before the license is granted to say that this is ready for chickens to live in?
Yeah, on page 4, it says, upon an approved application, the applicant is required to schedule an inspection to have the Development Services Department and/or ordinance officer go out and verify that they are meeting the requirements in terms of the type of construction and where it is on the property and all that, even though they should know those things from the application. But yes, the answer is yes.
So maybe the license fee might have to take in consideration the ordinance officer's visit.
Good point.
Number 3, what are the fine? How much would the fines be if people, is there a set fine schedule, or is it sort of just at the whim of the day, or how does that work?
And I haven't been at the heart of this as much as some people have, but I believe it's going to be treated like any other ordinance violation is the intent.
Yes, go ahead, Hap.
The way fines are, there's a general forfeiture provision in the code that says it's $5 to $500 for a violation of the code. And normally what happens is the municipal court sort of sets a bond schedule where that gets basically just, approved, although the council has a say in that.
Okay, thank you. And then lastly, are we providing any information for citizens and ourselves if there's chickens that are no longer viable for whatever reason? Is there places they can go to butcher the chicken?
No, that's a good question. I mean, I hesitate because I know the conversation has come up before about that type of issue. What would happen? I think both Bob and Kayla have had concerns about how that may play out someday. MAPS doesn't want to have any part of chickens that have been escaped and captured, or I don't think anything to do with any of this topic.
No.
So I'm not sure what the answer is to your question.
Yeah, I don't have a clue either. That was one of the biggest questions that we had,
Was.
especially for this body as well. What do we do with them?
I mean,
Are they going to run around and be strays?
Well, exactly.
Maybe.
And we don't want to have an exhibit at the zoo with chickens that ran away. So I would just suggest that maybe that is figured out before we start issuing licenses, especially since we're going to be going into the winter where chickens potentially could get frostbite and, have injuries from cold. And I think there's a humane place in a way that these chickens could be butchered. We just need to maybe provide a couple of addresses so that people could do that and the city could do that as well.
I totally agree with your idea. I just don't know what those places are, but you can see that day coming. It's not hard to picture that moment. I guess we can try and find what avenues they might have. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't either. I don't know off the top of my head if there's any place really that I think you run into a safety issue sometimes with these birds too. We've had a huge breakout of avian flu. We haven't heard a lot about it since probably the middle of the year. Oh, we're there already. Since probably April or May, whenever it was. But who's going to want a bird that they know nothing about to come into their shop just to butcher it for whatever reason it happens to be, knowing that there could be issues? When you introduce a new chicken to the rest of your chickens, it's usually about a 1 or 2 month introduction period. Because you don't know, you want to quarantine that new bird from your birds because you don't know anything about that bird and what it might or may not have. I mean, if you're going to slaughter it, I guess there's no real whoop-de-doo-dah to it because it's going to be slaughtered. But we don't want to also give the impression that we're going to allow that in a city because that's also one of the prohibited acts with this ordinance is to not slaughter them.
Alderman Weigel.
Thank you. I just wanted to chime into the conversation between Mr. O'Reilly and Officer Larson. Would it kind of serve both purposes if we qualified that section on there that says the sale of chickens is permitted, but, or we say something to the effect of the commercial sales of chicken is forbidden? That way we can sell, like to Mr. O'Reilly's point, we can sell them from neighbor to neighbor, but if you say commercial sale is not permitted, you can't bring in 20 and just sell them for a quick profit or breed them for a profit or something like that. Would that solve the issue or the concern?
Off the top of my head, my gut says, why have it in there?
Right.
Just eliminate it. I gotta go back to the dog thing. People have dogs and they breed their dogs, and they could do that, some of them at ridiculous rates throughout the year when they shouldn't. And they got litters, 2-3 litters a year. We're not prohibiting that, or we're not putting any legal binding on that either. So why would we do that with the chickens, I guess?
No, that's fine. I was just trying to see if that was an amenable solution, but if you disagree, that's fine. I'll side or defer to you. So that's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
And I think if I can chime in for a second, I think the reason I didn't, blink at this when I saw this earlier is my thought was, and I shared this earlier with Bob, is the fact that I assumed that we were talking about chickens that you had brought to your property, 4 chickens, and you were going to sell one of those chickens, as opposed to somebody hearing that you can sell chickens from your home and just bringing chickens in that you had never intended to care for and raise. You just brought them in for the sole purpose of doing business. So I picture this being a very small scale event at most, where somebody sells a chicken that they've been raising for a couple of years. I can see where the wording could be construed to just open the door to everyone.
Alderman Wagner, then Alderman Werman, then Alderman Spiros. Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mayor. Just listening to the conversation and the debate on this, I think what we've got before us is an incomplete ordinance. And I think right now I'm seeing we have questions about the license fee, or what the violation, what the fee or the fine for violation would be. We want to remove the right to sell chickens. I think that was the intent of Mr. O'Brien's work. And we need to have the slaughter issue addressed. So for that reason, I would move to send this back to the Plan Commission for completion.
Actually, what we are voting on is permitting chickens to be housed. We're not, those other issues will work themselves out after we either vote yes or no.
I think a motion to refer back to a committee takes a precedent over that.
We are voting on that entire ordinance, so it is much more expansive, what's on the agenda there. So if that is what a council member likes to do, we can.
Okay, Alderman Werman?
I believe Mr. Wagner just made a motion.
I did.
Okay, so then,
He's got a second.
okay.
I had made a motion to refer it back to the Plan Commission.
Okay, is there a second to that motion? Second by Alderman Weigel. Now Alderman Werman can do his discussion, or?
Yeah, I just had another question, and this maybe goes into that motion as well, in the sense of, is there, I don't know if I missed it, is there anything in terms of repeat offenders? I know Alderperson Tompkins asked about fines. One of the thoughts I had was how many violations is someone allowed before that license is revoked, or, if they're repeat offenders, to completely ban them from getting another license, so on and so forth. It sounds like there's some additional planning that needs to go on here, so maybe that's just something to consider as part of that.
Alderman Spiros?
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, follow-ups, maybe doesn't have anything to do with the motion to send this back to plan, but so I'm a little confused on the selling of chickens. So if people have 4 chickens and they decide after 3 months, hey, this chicken deal isn't for me, 3 doors down want to buy my chickens, why wouldn't you allow that? Because if you don't allow that, then you've got a homeowner who has 4 chickens that doesn't want them anymore. And the exact problem that you're worried about is how you dispose them. So that is that doesn't make sense to me. I think if you've got a chicken for 3 months and you decide you ain't in the chicken game, You should be able to sell your chickens, because if not, you've got to find a way to dispose them, which we've already figured out is a problem. So why can't you sell your 4 chickens? I think we're making a bigger deal out of it than it really should be. What do farmers do with laying chickens when they don't lay anymore? I've never lived on a farm. I've never been on a farm, so I don't know the answer to that, but there must be an answer to that. What do they do with their chickens?
Dinner.
I don't think she's wrong. Not trying to be funny, but yeah, I think they would butcher them.
Yeah, definitely.
And then going back to your first,
Okay,
if
so
a
they
cat, I don't know if you want
butcher
me-
their chickens, so isn't that how it's always done? I mean, we butcher everything, right? We butcher cows when we eat them, we butcher chickens when we eat them, we butcher pigs when we eat them. I mean, that's just kind of the nature of a farm animal.
But do we want to do that in the city? I guess that's something that we don't, that's why we prohibited it. We don't want that happening in the city.
Then maybe we should allow those people to sell their chickens out so that they can get butchered. I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I'm just saying a lot of this seems to be in an effort to stop the chicken ordinance. I'm sorry, but I'm just gonna call it like I see it. License fee, what do we charge for cats and dogs?
$8 for a dog, 16 if they're not fixed.
Okay, so we could look somewhere in the nature of that with maybe a few added bucks on, because there has to be an inspection for their chicken coop or whatever you call chicken house, whatever it is. So I do agree that there's a few things that need to be buttoned up and go back to the Plan Commission, but I don't agree with trying to squash this at this point in time. With questions that, I mean, eventually people will need to get rid of their chickens. I mean, just like they need to get rid of any other animal once they, serve their purpose or they've reached their maximum age.
I think to address your first question, which was why are we trying to get rid of the sale? We're not trying to get rid of the sale. People want to sell their chickens. I think go ahead and sell your chickens. Just like dogs and cats, people do it on Craigslist or any other list that you got out there, Facebook, social networking, whatever it happens to be. But I don't know that we necessarily have to advertise that you can sell the chickens. That opens up the can of worms that I mentioned before. But we're not telling people they can't sell their chickens.
Yeah, you can certainly refer this back to Plan Commission. I just want you to realize that the Plan Commission is only probably going to want to talk about the things that relate to planning and zoning. In other words, they're not going to want to try to establish a license fee. They're going to see that as an administrative task or something else. So a couple of the things that have been mentioned up here, they're not going to see as being their purview, including what someone is going to do with a chicken that they no longer want. So they'll probably respond to part of what you're asking, but there's parts of it they'll probably just look at staff and say, that this isn't our call. This isn't something we would normally decide. They don't set license fees for anything at Plan Commission level.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. Would it be appropriate to move this forward to the second reading with changes being made?
Yes.
Just amend with, okay.
Does that sound?
No, I mean, you gotta vote on that one motion. No matter if that motion fails, then obviously then what it'll go to is that. And by the way, I'm not trying to kill this. I'm saying that the Plan Commission that assumed ownership of this thing and sent it to us. We're gonna send it. Now we know how the council feels about those 4 or 5 items. We can ask them to amend that and bring back a completed ordinance to us. That's all they're doing here.
So would they be able to solve all the problems, or are we going to run into the same issue again when it comes back?
And obviously, like Steve said, as Plan Commission, we're not here to implement the price. We're not here to do all those other things. We were here just to vote on the housing of chickens, because that's what the Plan Commission is here for. And after we do this, then the rest of it should fall in line, right, Hap?
Well, I'm going to say that a couple of these issues sort of get resolved on their own. I do want to say I wasn't involved in the implementation of this, and frankly, I think because it went through the Plan Commission, this actually never came to me as after it was in that draft form. So some of these questions, even I haven't looked at to, look at what does that mean. And there is a question about what does it mean to say that you can sell chickens. That is something to be very careful about. But the other problem is if the Plan Commission gets this and they're looking at these issues, it's going to come to you in a format, and frankly, your reading here is to have the discussion that you're having. So if somebody looks at this and says, you know, I like the ordinance, but I don't want this, or I think we need to address this particular thing, then a motion can be made to amend the ordinance or change it like we have in the past and other things. So the answer is the Plan Commission could certainly do that, but it may be subject to this body's discretion because not everybody's going to agree on how to handle some of those things. And you're going to have to weigh in over some of these issues have health-related issues. Some of these have to do with, you know, setting forfeitures, et cetera. But when you talk about the forfeitures or what happens on second offenses, we've already got things in the code that addresses that. We have a provision in the code that talks about what happens on second offenses, and that gets implemented through the court and that kind of thing. Although it may change if you want to revoke somebody's license or something like that because they're not taking care of them. And I don't know to what extent that's even been discussed or an issue. Because again, I wasn't actually involved here. And not that I even have to be, but some of these issues are somewhat complicated, and I think they may have to be addressed by this body ultimately, no matter what comes back from the Plan Commission.
Alderman Spiros?
What I was going to ask, but now I remember. Do veterinarians euthanize chickens? I mean, if somebody has a rabbit, like a pet rabbit, and the rabbit needs to
go bye-bye? Yeah.
Yes. I mean, how do they get rid of it? They certainly, I don't think, kill it themselves. Maybe someone does, but do vets euthanize chickens, or is this just a really stupid question?
I think it's a good question.
It's a great question.
But I don't have an answer for you.
Right.
And I don't want to put any
we don't want to
guess out there.
Yeah, exactly.
Because my first gut feeling is, no, they're not going to euthanize a chicken. However, they might.
Alderman Tompkins and then Alderman Werman.
We've gone in circles. Is there anyone on staff who, instead of sending this back to Plan Commission, is there anyone on staff who can tighten up this ordinance for the second reading? Is there anyone who deals with the questions that we've asked, who might also be able to at least provide some ideas of where citizens can take chickens or where our ordinance officers can take chickens if they need to slaughter them? Can anyone do that and just tighten this up a bit?
We can try and do some research. I'm not sure what our avenues are, but I mean, we can certainly try and do that. And some of the other questions we can try and get some focus on. I really truthfully, and I'm not trying to speak against the reference of sending it back to Plan Commission, but I think Plan Commission look at it in terms of a planning and land use issue, whether or not it would be appropriate to allow chickens. I think some of the particulars we need to wrestle with at this level, whether it be staff and or council. So, I mean, if we have a list, I think we can try and see what we can address before it's talked about next time in 2 weeks. You know, the license fee, I think, I'm not sure in our ordinance, do we normally refer to license fees? It's set by the annual resolution we have to set and modify fees, but we can suggest what it might be. We can take a stab at the things you're talking about. I'm just not sure. The one thing I don't know about is the first question you brought up, and that is, where can you take them when you're done with them if you don't want them anymore? That we can try and look into this, but I'm not sure what we'll come up with.
Alderman Werman?
Thank you. I just wanted to ask for clarity on this one because it sounds like we have a couple different proposed directions. If we were to move forward with us to the second reading, are changes allowed to be made between first and second reading, or does it have to be approval at the second reading with no changes as is?
Absolutely. Changes are allowed to be made between the first and second reading. And that really is partly the reason for 2 readings. It gives a chance for discussion that might lead to some tweaking.
And if we were to vote no as a council to the second reading, would it be something that we could vote no and, you know, would we have to make a motion, I guess, at that point to say there's still more changes needed before voting? I'm just saying, like, we're not, if we say we want to make changes and move forward and then do the second reading and we still aren't happy, we're not killing it at that point, right? Like, we still have the ability to make more changes.
Yeah, that's all correct. It's entirely your purview to do all the things you just mentioned.
Okay, just because of Councilmember Wagner's comments, I just wanted to make sure, like, if we are to move forward, we still have options, and it's not like we're stuck and, we're not pigeonholing ourselves per se.
You do, and I applaud Councilmember Tompkins and others for asking these questions, because these are the kind of things we'll ultimately hear from residents at some point. So, I think they're good questions, but I think they can be worked through in the next couple of weeks, or if it takes one meeting after that to hopefully get to a conclusion if the body thinks that this is an ordinance in concept that they believe is reasonable.
Alderman O'Reilly?
Thank you. I'm a little concerned about directing how to dispose of animals from the city's standpoint. Obviously, I don't think legally we could tell them who they have to take them to or how they have to dispose of them as far as euthanization or anything like that. They are personal property. And I think we may be overstepping our boundaries there. Maybe Eb could weigh in on that, but I don't know. I guess I would be very careful with that. And then with that being said, I would also ask, would an amendment be required to change this for the second reading, or is direction enough provided with the concerns we had?
I think perhaps a motion would be in order, but it doesn't require an amendment because it's a work in progress. If I can speak to the other item, I don't think that you were thinking about requiring people to go to somewhere, just maybe giving them alternatives.
Right.
Because I agree with you. Directing someone as to what to do with an animal at that point is a bit of a government overreach, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So, I understand the concern, but I think we're sometimes getting things crossed in terms of what you might want to do. That the information about how somebody might be able to dispose of this otherwise, or where they go, or how that, somebody that they can actually go to, that's informative, but I sure wouldn't recommend that find its way in our ordinance. We don't normally address details like that. So it might be a piece of information. It might even be one of these types of press releases that says, we passed an ordinance and here's the things that you could do to try to, work within it or something. But yeah, we don't want to get into those details in the ordinance draft itself. Again, I've stayed out of this up until this point, mainly because there was a lot of political decision-making that needed to go into this. But ultimately, I do want to take a look at that. And in terms of directing how to dispose of them, we don't do that. As Officer Larson indicated, people have dogs and cats. We don't talk about exactly what they do with them. There may be people that euthanize their own animal. I don't know. We don't address it. There are regulations that involve cruelty to animals and all that sort of thing. And those things are there to address that and take care of it itself. So, I think we tweak this and take a look. Again, I don't make political decisions, though, but I think we do need to take a look and clean it up.
So we have a motion on the table and a second to take this back to Plan Commission. Any other discussion? So we need to vote on this. So please vote.
Mr. Werman?
No.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Motion fails.
Fails, excuse me, fails. Yeah, motion fails, excuse me, 6-3. So we'll tighten this up and bring it back in 2 weeks, and hopefully we can either cluck or put it to bed. Okay, item R, request to approve budget resolution number 20-2023, transferring $35,886.98 from the general fund contingency account to the general fund fire department repairs and maintenance account for repairs to fire truck number 1, presented by Pete Fletty, Fire Chief.
Good evening.
Good evening.
And so for this budget resolution in 2022, our ladder truck sustained damage on 2 separate occasions. We did file insurance claims for both times. That money was deposited into the general fund initially. The problem is the money did not get transferred out of 2022's budget into 2023. It was inadvertently missed at the end of the year. So what I'm requesting is that money be moved out of the general fund and into 2023 so we can make those repairs on truck one. The reason for the long delay was due to engine 2 being out of service for a long time and in need of repair. And also, of course, our parts delays that's been happening quite a bit lately. So I'm looking to have budget resolution 20-2023 approved in the amount of $35,886.98 out of the general fund and into our department budget to get the truck fixed.
Motion by Alderman Varsho, second by Alderman Tompkins. Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. Obviously, this is needed. I support it. It will be supported by me. But I do have a question on whether you're using local resources for any of these repairs, or I just want to make sure that we're giving opportunity to the community in these events.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, it is getting repaired locally by a business right in Marshfield. So we try to do as much business as we possibly can right here in Marshfield. In fact, DC Mueller just scheduled all of our DOTs, our pump testing, our preventative maintenance that's also being done in-house. There are some things, with our engines or stabilizers and things like that that need to be shipped out, but we try to do as much business as possible in Marshfield. So yes, it is getting repaired here.
Alderman Werman.
Thank you. Yeah, is it possible to just have finance give a little background on what happened here and like where? So if this money was supposed to be available in 2022 and it wasn't pulled forward, like what happened with it? Just want a little bit of clarity so I understand like where this money went and why it wasn't accounted for in the police and fire budget then going forward.
Good evening. Thank you. I'd be happy to talk through that. So what happens when we file an insurance claim and we get our reimbursement, based on estimated costs, it's a different timing cycle than when those repairs are actually completed and we need to remit that money out. Under normal circumstances, that would all happen within a fiscal year, or ideally, I would say it should happen in a fiscal year. In this case, we received our reimbursement for the insurance claim prior to expending the money, and that happened in different years. And we did not, in finance, realize that there was a disconnect in timing. So what we have done to remedy that is, if we are going to receive our proceeds prior to having to expend them on the repair, we have set up an account for that is to be reconciled at year end. So we can avoid this mismatching of revenue coming in and payments going out.
Copy. I like that we have a plan going forward. I'm just curious then, like the money, so was the money received in 2022 for
Correct.
This?
Correct.
And then was it put into the general fund, or where did that money go?
Absolutely. It was credited to an expense account, but the expenditure didn't happen to kind of clear it and make it a wash.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Anyone else? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item S, request to approve budget resolution number 22-2023, increasing 2023 budget for UWSP Marshfield capital projects by $1,556, presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
Hello. The approved 2022 to 2026 capital improvement plan and the 2022 budget included a $90,000 set aside for a replacement of equipment at UW Stevens Point, as well as $12,000 for sidewalk repairs. Initially, the project cost came in at $180,000, which we split evenly with Wood County at $90,000 each. However, into the process, the facilities manager at UW Stevens Point realized that we had underestimated the cost of the project, and we passed a budget resolution for $15,000 to accommodate that. What they had failed to include was the installation of the chiller, which came in for a city share. It came in at $5,000. So what we had proposed to do was the university did not expend the full $12,000 for the sidewalk and is hoping to utilize that money towards the expenditure of the chiller, which offsets some of that overage that they had. At the end of the day, what we need to do to be in compliance with our budget is to pass a resolution for $556, which makes our actual expenditures in line with the budget. In the 2023 capital improvement plan, the university had intended to spend $107,500 for some equipment, and that project is now estimated to be less than $100,000. But prior to that knowledge, we had borrowed for the full amount. So this budget resolution has a funding source available to it. It is more needed to be in compliance with actual expenditures not exceeding budget. So with that, staff recommends approval of Budget Resolution 2223 to increase the budget for UW capital projects.
Motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Wagner. Alderman O'Reilly.
Just looking for a clarification. So they put the chiller out for bids without installation? Is that?
I can't explain what happened. They are completely responsible for the procurement of that equipment. If we think back into 2022's time period, pricing was uncertain, and I think it was just overlooked by their.
All right.
Alderman Tompkins?
I had the exact same question. I guess in the future, we would just ask that if the UW has a project that they're asking us to share the cost with, that maybe they include every single step of the project so we actually know what the full cost would be.
Agree.
Any others? Alderman Spiros.
Yeah, I just want to let everybody know, in case you don't know, there are two council members appointed to the UW Commission. So we are familiar. Mike, it's you and I, we've been on it for quite a while. So we are familiar when these projects come through. We see the bids. We generally review the RFPs as a commission. So they are available, and they are available in the UW Commission minutes. So you can find those online.
Alderman Werman.
Thank you. I can definitely check. Unfortunately, I am out of state. When I return, though, I would be happy to take a look and send the council members the reasoning behind it. I know I have paperwork from my first UW Commission meeting. I think, if I remember correctly, I believe what happened was the former facilities manager had gone through the process for the actual installation, and I believe it was a part that they didn't account for that ended up causing the expenditures to go higher. And then left. And so when I got there, I think Rebecca was unfortunately not able to make the first meeting and only meeting that I've been at for UW Commission. But I believe that was the situation. And so they didn't know that was going to be it. They kind of got dealt a little bit of a bad hand when that facilities manager left. They were basically told, oh yeah, also don't forget that you have this. So that would be the reasoning for the increased cost there. And I want to say that the next chiller project that they looked at, I think they accounted for that in going into the future CIP. So.
Anyone else? Seeing no other discussion, please vote.
Werman?
Yes.
Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item T, request to approve resolution number 2023-43, securing bank loan for certain 2023 capital projects, presented by Jennifer Solinsky, Finance Director.
The majority of the 2023 borrowing for capital projects was financed through bonds. There are a few items that are not eligible to be bonded, which are vehicles and the boiler. For the past several years, the city has obtained loans of this nature from the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, which is more commonly known as the State Trust Fund loan, for these items. This year, I reached out to 2 other local banks as well as the State Trust Fund loan to compare rates, and the rates varied anywhere from 5.65% to 5.95%, with Forward Financial coming in at the lowest rate. The loan is being requested for 3 years, which aligns with the useful life of the police squad cars, which is the majority of the borrowing. The first payment would be due March 1 of 2024, and that aligns with the city's current schedule of debt payments. There would be no loan origination fees. Based on the lowest rate received from Forward Financial, staff recommends approval of Resolution 2023-43.
Motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Wagner. Alderman Wagner.
Yes, ma'am, thank you. The only hesitation I have with this is, and that we've always used the state trust fund before. And the nice thing about the state trust fund, that doesn't make the local banks compete with one another, and it doesn't allow for winners or losers in the contest. That's the only reason I would that's the only hesitation I would have about this. And here we're talking about a difference of, I think, 0.1% on $243,000 for 3 years. So I don't think this is a big deal, but I think in the future I'd like to look at this in terms of not creating a competitive situation with the bank and having winners and losers. Thank you.
Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item U, request to approve resolution number 2023-44, revised final resolution 2022 Hinman Avenue, presented by Josh Moritz, city engineer.
Thank you. Resolution 2023-44 is a revised final resolution for the Hinman Avenue reconstruction project that was completed in 2022. And it pertains to the special assessments for that project, and staff recommends approval of resolution 2023-44.
Motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Giles. Any comments, questions? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item V, request to approve resolution number 2023-45, final resolution 2023 Lincoln Avenue reconstruction, presented by Josh Moritz, city engineer.
So this is similar to the previous one. This one pertains to Lincoln Avenue reconstruction from 5th Street to Adler Road, occurring this year yet. So this pertains to the estimated special assessments.
Motion by Alderman Spiro, second by Alderman Varsho. Any discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Merman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you. Item W, request to approve right-of-way plat and resolution number 2023-46 relocation order for acquisition of property in connection with the Adler Road Trail Project, presented by Tom Turchi, Public Works Director.
All right, in 2022, the city of Marshfield was awarded a TAP grant from the Wisconsin Department of Transportation for construction of a multi-use trail on Adler Road from Sycamore Avenue to Weber Park. The project will require some permanent limited easements and temporary easements for grading and multi-use trail along the south side of Adler Road. Due to federal funds being used on this project, a real estate acquisition must follow the Wisconsin DOT process, which includes preparation of a right-of-way plat and relocation order to initiate the process. Attached are the relocation order and right-of-way plat, The plat shows the land interests that need to be acquired for this project along the south side of the project. The interests are permanent limited easements more or less for drainage structures and temporary limited easements just for grading purposes. The relocation order is an instrument that initiates the Common Council's intent to acquire the property. In April 2023, the Board of Public Works, and following that on Common Council on April 11th of 2023, have approved the contract with MedState Associates for the parcel acquisitions following the DOT process. Therefore, I am recommending the approval of the right-of-way plat and relocation order, and further authorize the Director of Public Works to sign the right-of-way plat on behalf of the city.
We have a motion by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Fire. Alderman Wagner.
Thank you, Mayor. Tom, okay, this is the first step. This is like a Chapter 32 relocation order. Is that what we're dealing with here?
No, it is not like that.
Why is it not like that?
We do not have the ability to condemn in this instance.
Okay, but we do have to follow Chapter 32 as far as, the next step now would be making a certified offer or something like that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Do we have any idea what, well, I guess the first question is, is there money in the grant to pay for the right-of-ways?
No, in fact, the grant, the SMA, all the property right-of-way purchases have to be made by the city at 100%.
Okay, and we don't have any idea how much that is?
Where this initiates a process where the consultant will start doing the evaluations on the values. We're not anticipating a huge number for this because in most instances it's 3 to 5 feet of temporary easement to provide for access.
And no, what do they call them? I guess the one that you got to watch out for is the uneconomic remnants. That we're not creating any of those.
We're not creating anything like that, no.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, please vote.
Mr. Werman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item X, request to approve plan for implementation of ordinance number 1496, Utility Commission membership, effective October 1st, 2023, presented by Steve Bark, City Administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, we recently, the council adopted ordinance number 1496. That amended section 14 of the municipal code, modifying the number of commissioners for the Marshfield Utility Commission from 5 to 7. And along with that, as required by state law, the terms also changed from 5 to 7 years. They need to be the same as the number of commission members. So the question at this point becomes, well, how do we implement this? What happens next now that we've made the decision to go to a 7-member body with 2 council members serving on the board? Just a recap of where we're at right now. Normally, utility commission members are elected every year, start their terms on October 1st. We're really in the time of year that we start soliciting. The council at the first meeting in September sees presentations from the interested candidates talking about their background and their experience and why they think they'd be good. And then on the second meeting of September, the council makes a selection as to who it wants to appoint to be the new commission member effective October 1st. So that's really the same process we want to continue going forward, but it's a little bit different now that we have more members and we have council representation. So here's the proposal we'd like to bring to you tonight. What we'd like to do is, we've already got 4 members of the Utilities Commission who are staying on the board after October 1st of this year, and their terms will expire per normal on October of 24, 25, 26, and 27 as their 5-year terms come due. So what we'd like to propose is that the 2 members of the council that are chosen by this body to serve on the Utility Commission, that one would serve into 2028, the other into 2029. And the thought being that maybe the even number, the representative from the even number districts here would serve up till 2028. Your elections just occurred recently, so that would be appropriate. And then the odd would be the following year, and they would be chosen until 2029. And then the citizen member that you would elect in September to take office as of October 1st, that person would serve until October 1 of 2030. So after that, when you get to 2030, we'd be on to a 7-year cycle. As mentioned earlier, members of the council who serve on this body may find themselves not running for re-election. They may be defeated in a race for re-election, but we'll deal with that as it comes up. Someone will be chosen to fill out the remainder of that term. by this body. So with that in mind, we'd like to recommend approval of the implementation plan for modifying the Utilities Commission representation as of October 1, 2023.
We have a motion by Alderman Spears, second by Alderman O'Reilly. Alderman O'Reilly?
Thank you. I have questions on, so will there be new council members appointed, or the council members that are appointed now would be the two members that stay on that utility commission?
Yeah, the members chosen will stay on the Utilities Commission as long as they are continue to be members of this body up until either 2028 or 2029, whatever the date is for the expiration of their term. And again, like I said, if somebody chosen in September by this body to represent the council on the Utility Commission wakes up one day down the road and says, I don't want to run for re-election, or they're beaten in a contested race, then that position through that year, whether it be 2028 or 2029, this body will need to reappoint someone to finish out that portion. They won't start a new 7-year term. They'll be reappointed to finish out the remainder of that term that the individual would have been on until 2028 or 2029.
In addition to that, I was also curious, I understand the October date, but being that this was approved already, would it not be appropriate to start them now? I mean, I don't understand. I guess maybe somebody can clarify if it's an additional burden to do that, or what the reasoning is for that, because it doesn't really impact the actual dates for re-upping down the road.
I'm not going to say that's not possible, but since you're on the precipice, if you will, of soliciting for and choosing a member of the body from the citizenry to take office as of October 1st, and that process is beginning, you're going to need people from this body to come forward. It would seem to make sense for all the terms to continue to start on October 1st. I realize that's 7 weeks from right now. I get it. But I think that's the most appropriate measure going forward, to have everybody start on October 1st and make the change then. I mean, I imagine there's other options, but that's what staff is recommending. Go ahead.
Yes, Jess.
Just to clarify too, state statute is very specific on how these commissioners are chosen. So you are required the 2 readings before the body. So even if you brought forward 2 council members interested at your August 22nd meeting, then you're having that election at your first meeting in September. So you're gaining 1 council meeting of time. So that was why it was proposed that just do that election all at once, let Utilities Commission do all of their onboarding at one time versus that 2-week lag, just because of that 2 reading proposal.
I think if we were having this conversation back in April or May, it would be a different conversation, but having it in August, I'm thinking this is appropriate.
Alderman Speros.
So right now we have 2 council members that are non-voting members.
Correct.
So those 2 would continue until October.
Yeah, and again, as non-voting members, they're there. They've been, I think, appointed by this body, but they have no standing in terms of the commission. So yeah, there's no reason.
They can't vote, but they can go into closed session?
They cannot go into closed session either. They are not members of the official body. And,
Sorry.
You know, and honestly, if you choose 2 new members and one of those 2 members who's been going as a non-voting member wants to continue to come to the meetings, there's no reason why they can't. I mean, I'm allowed to go as a citizen, and anybody else is to sit in open session, and even if I don't have any particular standing. Oh, I'm sorry, Nick.
No, that's okay. Nick?
I just want to clarify one thing as it relates to closed session. It's been brought up that council members aren't allowed through the policy. That's not actually true. We have invited council members into the closed session. Depends on the item that we've talked about. Sometimes there's been property things where we brought them in where we knew it was coming to this body. We've also brought them in on purchase power, because that's a big thing that's in front of us right now, working through that process. So they have come in closed session.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I guess I have a couple of questions also, if that's okay, then. All right, number 1, as the mayor, I appoint these people and then the council votes.
No, this is the one, this is the one, yeah, this is.
Okay, I'm sorry, yeah.
That's okay, that's all right, no, that's
Yep.
okay. This is the one exception to the rule
Oh,
where
yeah,
you do
that's
that.
right. I'm sorry.
It's specifically called out in section 14 of the municipal code that they are elected by this body. So we typically will get, like, I think last time we had 4 people who were interested, we have them talk at the podium, and then the council votes.
That's right. Okay, and to your response, Nick, about closed session, I've been kicked out of 4 meetings since I've been mayor. I'm not allowed in closed session, some of the meetings. So it's all relative to what's happening in the closed session meetings. And I went to a meeting and all they did was closed session and I was not allowed in. So I took half my day off and was kicked out. So it's probably not more personal, it's just how things are done. And I was completely taken back when they told me I couldn't go in. But I didn't suck my thumb. I walked out and went and had a lunch. How's that? Yeah. Okay, Alderman O'Reilly, it's your turn. You are up.
Thank you. I have a lot of questions tonight. Nick, I'm kind of curious if you can maybe comment on the appropriateness of a council member in there and what do you use for criteria? I don't know if there, I guess, from my perspective, I just look at our closed sessions and the only people that are allowed in them are people directly related with whatever that is. I don't know if you guys have the same rules or how that works.
Yeah, I guess a couple things you asked there. On the closed session, yes, it's based on the topic and based same process that you follow here, the appropriateness of the individual. So just as the mayor mentioned, if they are, if it's a, all staff don't come into a closed session, it's just a matter of the topic and what's being covered and who's appropriate for that. As far as you mentioned appropriateness of council members, as far as on the body, that's really up to your discretion. I mean, historically, I don't know if there's ever really been much of a thought out process. I mean, from my perspective, I would love to see there a little bit more diligence done there for diversity. So we have cross representation, but that's not necessarily been there isn't anything from a policy perspective or a code that defines what the makeup of that body has to be as far as their background.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second. And please vote.
Mr. Warman?
Yes.
Mr. Rigel?
Yes.
Motion passes. Item Y, review hiring plan for the Assistant City Administrator / Community Development Director position presented by Sarah Dreschel, Human Resources Director.
Thank you. I'm just going to take one moment. I'm going to have Eng help me get my PowerPoint up. Okay, thank you. All right, good evening. So as part of the process in creating the job description for the Assistant City Administrator / Community Development Director position, creating and providing a hiring plan to this group was mentioned as part of the overall process. So the next several slides are going to walk you through ideas and options to successfully hire a candidate into this new position. So again, just a little bit of background. The position is a combination of the new duties that have been discussed as well as the duties that previously had been held by the Development Services Director. That position was vacated in April of 2022 and never successfully filled. There were 3 rounds of recruitment, 2 job offers to potential candidates, and unfortunately no actual hire to that position. An organizational chart committee was created in January of 2023, resulting in an approval to move forward with this new position. And after several other meetings and consultations with Common Council, a final draft of the job description with compensation was provided and approved by Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee to be brought to you today via consent agenda, which did pass as well. So in looking ahead to next steps in hiring on an employee at this level, I looked at both the city administrator position as well as the department division heads in our recruitment policy, which is 3.145. In both sections of the policy, part of the search committee is described. And basically what it is it's appointed by Common Council and consists typically of mayor, finance, budget, and personnel chairperson or their designee, Board of Public Works chairperson or their designee, Common Council members, human resources, city administrator, other staff, and also outside representation and or community leaders. So that is all of the group that typically is part of that search committee. The only additional resource listed just for the city administrator role is having a professional consultant as part of the search team process. So having a professional consultant has been recommended by a few people during the process of creating this position and will be a recommendation as we walk through things. So with this position in particular, we want to make sure that we have a multifaceted approach in order to really gather qualified candidates for a selection team to consider hiring. So in previous presentations, the idea of having a professional consultant or a recruitment firm has been discussed. As we've seen with other higher level open positions that we've had, the market's very difficult and when trying to attract candidates. So there are several advantages to working with a consultant from a recruiting firm, including usually a consultant will shorten the time that it takes to fill a position. They have talent pools and databases of active and passive candidates that they can interact with and present the position to that otherwise might not hear about our positions or know how to apply for our positions. They also generally have access to a large talent pool of pre-screened and referenced candidates that have already been carefully assessed and interviewed on their part. So they will have spent time with us up front to learn about the needs and wants for the position and then be able to match potential candidates to that position. Additionally, seeking out talent for positions is what they basically specialize in and are really, really good at. So options for consulting. There are tons of recruiting firms that are out there in the market. Some specialize in certain markets and some specialize in recruiting for certain roles. One recommendation that I received was to reach out to UW locations that specialize in public administration. UW Oshkosh has a great program, and I did reach out to them for recommendations on search firms that they would recommend. They did recommend GovHR as well as they actually offered to provide our position within their alumni database so that basically all of their alumni could see this position and possibly be interested in it as well. Additionally, recommendations were provided from HR professionals within local governments throughout the state of Wisconsin and other agencies for their top picks for recruiting firms that they've either used in the past or things like that. So this topic has come up quite a bit within that group. The top two that consistently are mentioned are GovHR and Baker Tilly. So in the past, we have utilized GovHR, so that probably does sound familiar, but we've utilized it on a really small scale. So instead of a full search for candidates, what we were doing is kind of basically paying a flat rate to have them post the position for us and then basically utilize their database of candidates. But they weren't fully doing a recruitment process for the position. So just to provide a little bit of an overview of what the process would look like, our first step would be to reach out to potential recruiting firms just to gain ideas about their pricing. So typically they'll request from us a job description, which we now have, pay information, which we now have, and details about the city of Marshfield overall. And then based on our needs to fill the position and other factors such as location, cost of services, all of that will be presented. So typically recruitment fees are collected as a percentage of the annual salary for the position that's being hired. Some agencies will require some fees up front, while others will base it on their firm filling the position and charge it at the end of the process. So all of this will be predetermined before any agreement is made and will be presented to the Finance, Budget, and Personnel Committee for guidance and approval of the firm, as well as approval of how to finance the costs, likely a budget resolution to utilize potentially part of the development services budget that has gone unused this year for vacant positions. So some options there. With approvals, the firm will then begin their search using their tools and databases basically to begin finding candidates for us. They will typically keep us updated with potential candidates. They'll ask additional questions and work to get interviews scheduled. And the final process is hopefully filling the position. So utilizing an external recruiting firm is useful and full of advantages, but it does not mean that internally we would stop our recruitment activities and just rely solely on the firm to produce candidates for the positions. So the ideal approach would be to combine the use of a consultant as well as continue internal recruiting. So we have several free options that we currently utilize, including Indeed, League of Wisconsin Municipalities, Facebook, LinkedIn. All of those are free options that we currently utilize. Additionally, there are a few paid options to consider, including governmentjobs.com and ZipRecruiter. Both have payment options that you can choose from. Some are 60-day options, some are 1-month options. This is part already of our current budget within administration, so those costs are already kind of built into our budget for those. Let's see. Any candidates that apply to our position on their own, their name basically is flagged with the firm that we would be working with so that they, number one, don't contact them or claim them as their own. So basically, if we would end up moving forward with a candidate that had gone through our normal process, we wouldn't be paying the fee to the firm depending on what our contract with them says. Okay, so the first part, moving forward on to what do we do once we have candidates? The first part of the team is the core team. The core team is, as you can see here, city administrator, HR director, HR generalist. Their responsibility is purely to create a timeline, to craft job announcements, seek out pricing and information about recruiting firms. They're basically the first reviewers of possible candidates for the position. Would be a point of contact for the candidate or the recruitment firm. And we would coordinate all recruiting activities like setting up the interviews, coordinating the selection team availability, coordinating traveling needs of the candidates, et cetera. So kind of more of like the administrative type of activities. The selection team, as previously mentioned, is somewhat set forth by the recruitment policy that I previously mentioned. This group will be appointed and approved by the Common Council. So suggested members for the committee within the policy would be the mayor, finance, budget, and personnel chair, or their designee, board of public works chair, or their designee, common council members, human resources, and any other applicable positions that we would feel would lend to the recruitment process. With the quantity of people that would be involved with this group, likely when we do interviews, there would be 2 groups. Each candidate would meet with each one of those groups. So for example, when I went through the hiring process for my position, I did come to City Hall and I had a 2-step process one right after the other. Members of each interview panel did include positions like police chief, finance director, and city administrator, as well as members of common council, and also HR from Marshfield Utilities, basically applicable people for the interview process. There are back-to-back interviews, as I mentioned, with each group, and both of the groups had separate interview questions, similar but different. The overall process for interviewing can differ, of course, but keeping it to one day is ideal for the members of the group as well as for the candidate. Ideally, we would hope to narrow our search down to 3 candidates that we would bring on site for interviews. That is with the hope that we'd have many, many more candidates to choose from. So we will see. So overall, based on everything shared tonight, I'm looking for feedback, ideas, recommendations on moving forward with this hiring plan. I would recommend for sure utilizing the freed and paid options that are our internal efforts, similar but enhanced to what we do today. Also, utilizing a recruiting firm will likely speed up the process and provide us with potentially more qualified candidates. Additionally, this group would need to determine who to appoint and approve for the selection committee once we get to the interview process or interview stage of the process. So at this time, I'm available to answer any questions that you might have or any feedback and comments that you'd like to provide. Otherwise, I will move forward with the hiring plan as outlined tonight.
Any comments, questions? Alderman Wagner.
Thank you. Okay, how long is it going to take to do this? I mean, that's what I was waiting for the timeline to pop up here, and it didn't happen. So I think it's something you're not going to be happy to tell me, right?
Actually, no. So the finding a firm, since we have 2 that have been highly recommended, basically that's just reaching out to them, asking, basically providing them the initial information that we would need to provide them, where they could at least give us an estimate. Typically, it's going to be 20 to 35% of the first year salary. That all probably we could do within a week.
Okay, that's what sort of what I was looking for. Basically, aside from Baker Tilly and what was the other one?
GovHR.
Do you have any recommendations for us between the 2 of them?
We have experience for sure with GovHR, and it was a very positive experience. We did, through them, even with their basic plan, we did receive a candidate for our development services director position. Unfortunately, it didn't work out at the time, but not at the fault of GovHR for sure. Baker Tilly, I have not personally worked with. They just come very, very highly recommended. I think, me personally, it would come down to what each has to offer as far as their recruitment plan, what they feel like their timeline would be, and then the overall cost.
So are you going to bring them before finance, budget, and personnel when?
As soon as we can get it scheduled.
And you'd want us to be able to make a decision at that time, right?
Yes, so I'd want to give you as much information upfront before that meeting as I possibly could, so that you could make a decision at that meeting.
Okay, let's see. I've got that. Basically, we are going to need to discuss the interview team or teams until we have a candidate, which at this point, I think we're going to be bloody lucky if we have a candidate. I mean, it's been everybody I've talked to the Planning Commission, the Regional Planning Commission, although Jason Grunenberg over at County Planning had great luck in filling 3 positions. And I don't know, maybe he hired relatives, I don't know. But I mean, he's the only one I've heard of that has had any luck with these kind of positions. So, but I thank you for what you've done so far, and I ask you to proceed post haste. This one position is critical to everything we're doing.
Agree.
Anyone else? So we're all in agreement. Sarah, move forward. Correct? Yes, please. No less than 10 candidates, okay?
Is somebody trying to speak to us from remote? No.
Okay, on to item Z. Appoint 2 council members to the city's negotiating team for collaborative bargaining with the police and fire unions, presented by me. Rebecca had reached out and Ed also, so I am going to bring their names forward with approval of the council. If someone make a motion, please, and second.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Any other discussion? Please vote.
Foreman,
Yes.
Weigel,
Yes.
Congratulations to both of you, and thank you for stepping up again. Double A, appoint housing committee per June 15th council EDB meeting presented by Steve Bark, city administrator.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, earlier this summer on June 15th, we had a good meeting over at the community center with the council and the Economic Development Board focused entirely upon housing. CDA was also invited, and they had a couple folks there. There were some others present as well. Had a good discussion for about 90 minutes. What came out of that at the end was the desire to form a committee to look specifically at housing, dive into it deeper, and come up with recommendations that would go back to the council and presumably the other bodies as well for their review and consideration. So the request was to get membership from these various bodies and bring it forward. So I have proposed tonight for your consideration of appointments to the new housing committee from the council, Derek Werman and Ed Wagner, from the Economic Development Board, Mary Jo Wheeler-Schuler and Ken Bargander, and from the CDA, Carol Kerper and Mary James Mork. I would be the staff liaison to get this team going and to facilitate their work. And I would recommend approval of this body. And if it indeed happens, then I would suggest that we get these meeting goings as soon as we're able to do so.
We have a motion on the table by Alderman Tompkins, second by Alderman Varsho. Any other discussion? Seeing none, please vote.
Foreman,
Yes.
Weigel,
Yes.
Motion passes. Item BB, suggested items for further agendas. Alderman Giles.
Thank you. Since the citizen survey ended last week on the cat declawing ordinance, and since it was overwhelmingly in favor, I was requesting that, I know we had talked about a public forum as the next step. I was just requesting that we set up a public forum.
Yeah, I agree. I talked to Tom about when the deadline passes. So that is very appropriate, and we will move forward to set that up.
Thank you.
Alderman Tompkins.
I had requested, I think, last meeting for a report from the Utilities Commission just about the electrical use, the needs of the city, future needs, all of those issues. I don't know if that's been scheduled.
Yeah, I had shared that with Nick. I don't know what you can report, if you'd be ready to come back to another meeting or what.
It's on the agenda for Monday. For the commission to discuss what you requested to figure out how to respond to it.
Alderman O'Reilly.
Thank you. I noticed there was some other topics brought up last week by Mr. Werman and Mr. Weigel. I was curious, are those moving forward with any agenda in the future?
Yeah, I'll have to look back at those. I think we maybe answered a question or two of those, but some of those probably need to be agenda items, and I apologize. We'll look at getting those on for next time.
Anyone else? We need a motion to adjourn, please. Alderman O'Reilly, second by Alderman Tompkins. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.